Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elaine Matthews, and welcome to Elaine's Extreme Paranormal channel. We have a special guest tonight. His name is John Moore, and he's from the Ottawa Paranormal Research and Investigations Group. And if anyone would like to leave any messages and ask any questions, please just go to the Facebook page, which is entitled Elaine's Extreme Paranormal channel. Type your messages, we can get them there. So we have John with us right now. Hi, John, how are you? And thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
Hi, Elaine. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Can you give us a little bit of background information regarding yourself, if you would, please?
Sure. Well, I've been a paranormal investigator for 20 plus years now. I started when I was 15 in my home province of New Brunswick. Back then, as you can imagine, it was 1995, so there was not too much resources available to someone who was just starting out. So a lot of what I got from reading books by on parapsychology, demonology, things like that. So since then, I've been an investigator, both as a freelance, working independently, a researcher, and I've worked with numerous teams between the Eastern Canada and the few here in Ontario as well.
Oh, that's terrific. So you've had quite a bit of extensive experience, and you've done a lot of traveling. That's great. Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so how many's on your team, John?
On the Ottawa Paranormal Research and Investigations team, we have at current 12 full-time investigators. We like to keep a couple of extras because a lot of the time, some people can't make it out to certain investigations. So we often will rotate in who goes on some cases, and obviously we have people that are sick or family commitments, things like that. So we always have a good mix. But generally, we'll when we're on a case, we'll bring 6 to 8 personnel, depending on the size of the investigation location.
Well, that's terrific. It's nice when you have some backup, like as you say, if a person's sick or they can't make it, whatever. It's nice you have some backup you can call in there just in case. Yeah. For sure. Well, as you know, I'm freelancing too. Have been for some time now. And I find actually that the freelancing is a lot more interesting than sometimes just belonging to a set team and that's it. You know what I mean? It might sound crazy, but...
I do. The one problem I had when I was doing the freelance, though, was the fact that it was kind of hard to find cases. And when you did find a case, you would always be in need of someone to help you out to do them. Like, when you go into a case, you have your EMF detectors, you have your audio, your video, all those things. I mean, you're fumbling around with them when you're doing it alone, right? So it kind of gets to be a bit of a hassle. So I just find it so much better to have at least a couple of people with you. So that's why I've gravitated more towards the group setting. Now, the one good thing about the freelance, though, is that you didn't have to worry too much about different opinions and ideas clashing. So
that's very true. Yes. Yeah. Well, Marie, as you probably know, she and I have teamed together as far as doing investigations are concerned. So that's great. So like the two of us go together, and of course, if anyone else is needed or want to come along that could maybe help along with an investigation, then that's the way we do it. And that's worked out very, very well. And you're always best to have a second person anyway, let's face it.
One of the main rules is you should never investigate alone, because if there is something that happens, who's going to believe you if you're on your own, right? You always should have some sort of a witness with you at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the best thing. But one thing I must say I've found about the paranormal, doing it freelance, is that I've been able to help people even on the internet, like in different countries, whereas with the team setting, you're more or less, you go here, you go there, that's about it. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to poo-poo the idea of a team. I think the teams are great. Like I still help out with Afterlife Muskoka, or Afterlife Paranormal Muskoka. So we'll get it together, some of the old gang there, and that's nice. It's great to be able to work with a group of people as well as doing some things on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also get a lot of like those contacts, but a lot of those cases generally I'll look to people that I know. Because I've like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I made a lot of friends from all over the place, and a lot of the time when we're contacted by something that's out of the range of the Ottawa team, what we'll do is I'll locate one of my friends that is in that general vicinity and ask them to look into it for us. Just because, you know, it's always better if you're working on something like this to be on site, hands-on, and then you can see what's going on, get a better idea of what exactly these people are experiencing and what could be causing it.
Yes, exactly. So how many do you work on usually at a time, like in a week? I know it varies from place to place, but
Yeah.
you're a pretty large area. We're not that large.
Well, some weeks are busier than others, as you can imagine. I mean, during January and February, things were pretty quiet, but right now, the past couple of months, I've got anywhere from 5 to 6 on the go at a time. Of those, maybe 1, 2 might make it to investigation.
Oh, that's great. I know we don't have we don't have so many here, should I say, at a time. And yet at other times, oh, gee, 2 or 3 times a week you may get something. It all depends, eh? I know each investigation, of course, is different. Each setting is different. But it's amazing how sometimes you can go for weeks, not get a thing, and then other times you're overwhelmed with them. Do you find that also?
Oh, absolutely. That's a regular occurrence, honestly.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Okay, so on the paranormal, what are the best kinds of investigations that you and your team like to do, where you show someone to the light or just investigating to see if there's any ghostly activity there, or how would you describe that?
Honestly, the ones that we enjoy the most are when we get a chance to go out to a location where it's been reported activity for, you know, for a long time. Uh, some houses that we've been to, people have moved in, and we've had reports of activity from 4, 5, 6 different families that have lived in this house, just going back over the years. So those are the ones that we typically like the most, because those are the ones that when we look at them, there's the best chance that something's actually going to show itself to us. So that's
Right.
what we really like. That's what we really enjoy investigating, is those ones.
That's great.
Now at
So
the
do you
same
find it
time,
necessary?
oh,
I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say at the same time, it's always nice too. Like the other ones that we do enjoy also, it's probably almost as much, or when we get to be the first people into a place to investigate, where nobody else has been there. There are claims, nobody knows what's going on, and just being that first person in, the first chance to look at it, that's always a good feeling too that we enjoy.
Oh, for sure. You're the virgin team, in other words.
Well, I wouldn't use that.
Crack.
I wouldn't use that word exactly, but yeah, I know what you mean. We're the first. We're the first guinea pigs.
Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I know some of my favorites are actually meeting, meeting up with these particular spirits and helping them to go into the light if they want to go. I know certainly they can't be forced, but have you, darn it, what was the question I was going to ask you? I interrupted you first, and then be darned if I forgot my question. So do carry on. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, we have had a couple of those like that where we've walked into a place. The activity was consistent with, but one of our most recent ones, the activity was consistent with an old man, and our psychics had told us what they were picking up on was that this man had died, and he didn't really know he was dead, almost like he passed in his sleep from a heart attack or something, and he just woke up there and he was confused. That was one case. On that case, we actually caught some corroborating evidence that was in EVP. We had a couple of old men saying, "Who are you?" things like that. So that actually, to have that going with what the psychics were telling us, led us in the direction of thinking that this man was here, and we were able to, with the help of using psychic mediums, cross him into the light. So,
Well, that's great. Now, do you find, John, that you can do a better job as far as investigating when you investigate in total darkness, like some of these TV shows do, or not?
I find you can usually, as long as the activity that's reported takes place in that time frame, right? Because I mean, if the activity reported takes place at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I mean, it's daylight, it's going to be bright, there's not much you can do about it. But typically, if we're investigating, we like to have the lights out when we do it, just because it reduces the number of anomalies that you can capture in the cameras. With the lights out, you won't get as many light reflections or just like glare, things like that. You don't get that as much with the lights out. So some of those light anomalies can be just thrown out immediately.
Right. That's very true. It just never ceases to amaze me how on these television shows they always say all the lights must be out. And I don't know. Sometimes, depending on the building that they're in, I think that can be pretty dangerous because they don't know where they're walking and they may only have their IFRs to see by.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, after a while of doing it, you get pretty adept at actually walking with the IR camera. I mean, I've myself luckily have been doing this long enough that I've gotten the hang of it. A couple of my other investigators are getting pretty good at it. Then we do have a funny video of one of ours when he was, he's usually pretty good. It's Craig, and it's on our website. And he's actually training at the time, and that's why he's not paying attention to where he's going with the IR, and he actually walks right into a pole. But yeah, it was also the funniest part for us is we were teaching the rookie to tag everything that he hears. As you know, when you're doing EVP, you tag things that you know what they are. We listen to it back, and we're not, hey, what was that? Why didn't they hear that with their ear? Why aren't they reacting to it? But after you hear Craig hitting the ping of the pole, you hear Craig going, ooh, there's a pole there, followed by our rookie, Craig, walking into a pole. So the video itself is quite comical.
I can just imagine. I can almost feel that, too. I just have a vision of someone walking along holding up the IR camera and bang, walk into a hole in the floor or something. And all of a sudden, you don't see a blasted thing.
Oh, no. We always do. That's another thing. We always do a daytime walkthrough of a location, looking for those things specifically. And if anyone is going to an area where something like that's present, we'll usually try to, if it's a hole, we'll try to cover it up, or with a piece of plywood, something there so that you won't fall through. Or if not, we make sure everyone's aware when you're in that area, do not move without having a light on. So safety is always the #1 priority.
Right. Well, it has to be. Safety definitely has to be your #1 priority. Mm-hmm. So, well, in view of all these different things, that have been happening on the paranormal shows, and now there's a great deal of controversy concerning mediums and psychics. It sure doesn't do much to give the ones who are serious about the business a very good name. How do you feel about all these different things that are going on with the falsified predictions of mediums and psychics? Hearing more and more about it.
Well, this has never been a new thing. I mean, the reason we're hearing about it more and more now is just the fact that now paranormal has come from being in the shadows like it used to be 20 years ago to being out in the forefront where it's pop culture now. I mean, shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, they brought it out into the daylight where people everywhere are seeing it and they want to be part of it. And this argument about psychics, the frauds, the charlatans, the people like that are just giving a bad name to the good, true psychics. It's always been there. It's just now, because it's more mainstream, we're seeing it more. And we're seeing a lot more trying to do it just because there's more money in it now than there was before.
Yeah, I suppose so. See, there are a lot of us who don't charge a cent for it. So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me as far as saying myself, like I'm not going to go to someone's house and say, well, for such and such amount of dollars, I can rid your home of whatever spirit. And that's being said by one in particular. Like, I won't mention any names just for safety purposes and courtesy purposes. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I think it's rather arrogant of a person to say that they can clear a person's house of any spiritual activity for a set amount of money.
Oh, it is extremely arrogant, and you can't guarantee something like that. I mean, first of all, we have no way to honestly scientifically prove these even exist.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Two, how do they know they've cleared it?
Exactly.
I mean,
I mean, I know
and the other
myself.
thing, a lot of the times we've gone into these situations, there have been a lot of these where there have been a lot of natural factors involved, like high EMF, illness, medical and otherwise, and things like that. And I mean, for a psychic to come in and say, for $400, I can make the activity go away. You know, somebody who's got, I'll use one example that we've run into, a brain aneurysm, that activity is not going to go away. I mean, that's a medical condition. No psychic can make that go away.
No.
But at that point, they're just preying on these people. And I mean, that in itself is, personally, I find that disgusting. So.
Yes, I agree with you. I do too, John. It is disgusting, really. As you said too, yes, there's no way that you can guarantee that. Now, myself, I know if a place has been cleared, I can tell if the atmosphere seems lighter in the room or in that house, in the area, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I can kind of tell. But then whether that has to do with because I'm an empath or not, I have no idea. But it's amazing the number of people, like you say, that, well, okay, for $400, I'll do so and such and such. And then they'll say it's done. And quite often it's not. And yes, I agree. It is disgusting. It's very disheartening.
Mm-hmm. And it also gives those that are genuinely out trying to help a very bad name.
It does. It does. So, okay, John, of all the investigations that you've done over the years, how many would you say actually concern themselves with demonic entities?
Truly demonic entities, I say we've probably come across 5 over the years. 5 that we could consider possibly demonic. So the thing with the demonic is they're incredibly difficult to discern from other cases. Because a lot of times, most people, especially nowadays with the shows the way they are, everything's a demon now. You see it a lot on all of them. Everything's a demon. They want to call them out. Some of them like to say they're getting possessed on television, which most demonologists I speak to, when they hear that, just laugh and go, what are you doing? Like, that's not how it works. But no, the cases we've come across, there have been some where we believed it, but there's been others where they weren't actually anything demonic. They were, in truth, just human spirits that were attempting to communicate. And during that communication, people were misinterpreting what was happening.
Right. Okay, we've got a question coming on here. It says, if you are communicating with a spirit, how do you know, other than actions, that you see if it's friendly or nasty?
That's a good question. In general, you have to watch what they do. I mean, a nasty spirit, most of the time, is going to have some nefarious intention to what they're doing. They're going to be trying to get you to do things. They're going to be after you to convince you to invite them more. They're going to be doing things like that, trying to get you to invite them to you.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to watch for too is a lot of the times when you have nastier spirits, you'll have more physical abuse involved. You know, some people would see just say a pen on a table and they'd say, and the pen falls off. We're just going to say hypothetically the spirit made it fall off. Now, is that spirit throwing a pen at you? No, he's just pushing the pen over. But to somebody who sees that, their first reaction is fear. They're thinking, oh my God, that pen just was thrown at me. So that's one of the things we have to look for, like watching for, you know, where people are getting attacked, they're getting bruises, they're getting pushed and all, things like that. Those are the things that we look at and we see these are more negative entities than they would be just miscommunication from something that's not evil.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's not even paranormal.
That too, yeah.
Sure. Well,
I'm going at that point strictly on cases where we would deem it to be something of the more paranormal nature, not something that's already been debunked.
Right. Yeah, that's very good. And see, we have, of course, as you know, because you're one of our admins, we have who we call a resident skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'm really glad we've got him, because it really is good, I think, to have a skeptic on board. He kind of keeps us all on our toes.
Absolutely, every team should have one. I'm lucky enough
So,
to be married to one, so that gets
oh,
quite
well.
interesting. Oh, and on our team, we generally look for a good mix of our believers, psychics, and our skeptics. Thankfully, at the moment, I have 4 that are clear skeptics. And at the same time, when you're working with these skeptics, you need to have people that actually have an open mind, right? You can't have somebody that just immediately is going to dismiss everything, and no matter what, they're just saying, you know, you guys are full of it. This is junk. This is hocus pocus. It's why are we even here? I mean, that type of a skeptic, there's nothing you can do about it, and they are out there. There's no way you're ever going to change their mind, and those ones are the ones that generally should be avoided in this field, just because, you know, they're closed-minded. Anything could happen, and it's not going to change them, right?
Right. And they can do just as much damage as the person who says that everything that happens is paranormal when it's not. So, 6 of one, half of the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've been doing a lot of traveling too, John, giving talks and all that kind of a thing, different locations. Do you have any coming up shortly?
Well, I've done a couple. We are working on one here in the fall here, actually just north of the city of Ottawa. It's actually one that's going to be sponsored by the Ottawa Paranormal team, as well as the Witch Hollow, which anyone who's seen the show that we've been doing, the Ottawa Paranormal Project, will know that was our premiere episode on the 31st. Kind of didn't pan out as well as we'd hoped, because it rained all night and all the activity is actually on the grounds. But what we're planning to do this fall is actually hold sort of a mini Paracon at the Hollow itself, where we're going to have, we're working on getting speakers, vendors, all kinds of things. Right now, it's still a work in progress, but there will be announcements and updates coming in the next month or so that'll have the exact date nailed down. But we're looking right now at some point in mid to late September.
Oh, that would be great. I'd love to see Witch Hollow. I've heard so much about it. Would love to see it.
Well, once the plans are set, I'll definitely let you know. Like I said, it's in Lanark County, so it's about an hour to the northwest of the city. I believe it's about 2 hours from Bracebridge.
Oh, right. Okay. So it would certainly be feasible to make the trip then.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Oh, I'd love to see that. Alrighty. Well, I'm kind of at a loss for things to suggest, because I know there's so many different things having to do with the paranormal that, like their orbs, different things like that, EVPs. Do you find that a lot of your EVPs, you get a lot of Class A's or no?
No, Class A's are extremely rare, unfortunately. I think we've been lucky enough to get a couple. Mostly what we come up with are Class B's, which those are ones where you can make out a voice in it, but sometimes you might have some questioning on exactly what's being said. You know, one person might hear one thing, another might hear another. The only thing people can agree on is there's definitely something there. So we get a lot of those in Class C's. I mean, there are other ones you get that you're not sure about, but generally those there's doubt to them, you just throw it out.
Right. I know we don't very often get Class A's, but I know I got one that, it was just so easily discernible. It was amazing. But I was talking to the one in particular right here in the home where I live. I said, "Are you responsible for moving these things around on me?" And the reply that I got was, "I am beside you." Plain as day. But then I said, "Why are you doing that?" And this voice comes back and says, "I don't know." Whoever the spirit is, he seems to have a sense of humor.
Apparently.
I think so.
Our best one actually was recorded at a location. I can't say the name of the location because they requested not to be released on where they were. But one of our investigators, Amanda, she was in the basement with JF and our psychic Craig. The three of them were actually just walking down a hall, and Amanda, she's an ECE. She works with children regularly, and in this, one of the claims of this location was that it actually used to be at one point an orphanage. So she spent most of the night pretending to talk to them like they were her kids in school, the way you would, talk to children. And while she was walking down this hallway with JF, who has a thick French accent, and Craig, who's got a very deep, gravelly voice, we're going down the hall, just, like teacher would with the kids, and you hear this little child's voice go, "Awesome." And everybody who's heard this looked at it and said, "Okay, so where's the EVP?" And it's like, well, that "awesome" wasn't one of our guys. And then when they hear the voices of Craig and JF a few minutes later, it kind of hits home that, this wasn't anyone that was actually there that said this.
Right.
So that was probably one of our best captures.
Just got a question that popped up on the screen. If you have ever had an investigation that turned out there was nothing there, and what the reaction was of the client when you told them that you didn't sense anything there.
We probably have a majority of those. For every 10 calls I get, there's at least 8 of those. So it's a lot of people. We don't just tell them, there's nothing here. We don't just come in, look at their house, and say, "Oh, well, there's nothing here. You're mistaken." No, we'll actually go and look to try and find out reasons for what is happening. If somebody says, "I'm getting these things moving, I'm hearing noises, I'm hearing knocks, I'm hearing bangs," we'll actually go in through the house and try to find out what's creating this. Like, we'll try to debunk them, recreate them. We have had a couple. The last one we had, they didn't take it too kindly. They kind of thought we were insulting them, because a lot of what they were talking about, I'm trying to pick my words carefully here because I don't want to give away too much personal info for these people, but I do know there were some medical issues involved with the family, and they were trying to avoid using their medication as directed, basically because it was cheaper that way. So, and by doing that, it was actually affecting them to the point where these symptoms were side effects of the medication.
And there are so many medications that will cause that.
Absolutely, yes.
To say nothing of the fact that people who might be hypersensitive when they're around electrical wiring, things like that. It's amazing what that will cause too. The nausea, the headaches, the feelings of being watched, feelings of dread.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time, the knocks and bangs, things that we've found with that, it's most often some sort of heating, something in heating, plumbing, all kinds of things like that. Like, those are just things that you have to look for. And then usually once you tell these people these things, even though you didn't find anything, you're not telling them you're crazy. You're actually giving them, well, these things are happening. You are hearing this, but it's not a ghost. This is what's going on. And generally when that happens, they're usually pretty happy about it, because you've at least solved the problem of what they were looking for. It's not just you come in, you tell them, "Oh, there's nothing here," and you leave, and they're still stuck with, "Well, then what is this?"
Right. Okay, we've got another question come up on the screen here, John. And she says, "Hello, Elaine and John. Does John have an ideal amount of people to have at once while on an investigation? And what is your favorite piece of equipment? What's your least and why?"
Every location is different, honestly. There is no real ideal number depending on where you are and what you're looking at. For example, I've investigated a couple of one-bedroom apartments. For that, I mean, obviously, there was 2 investigators that were there, and that was all we needed, because that was pretty much all we could fit in the place, right? We've had other ones where Witch Hollow is a good example. We've got massive acreage we have to cover. So we'll be out, we'll have, hold on, our last time out we had, I believe it was 6 of us. but we were mainly focusing on the house. On another trip out there, we had 10 of us, but we had 6 inside, and we still had another, or no, sorry, we had 4 inside, and we had another 6 outside. And it was such a large area that we couldn't even cover it with that many. So, you know, each case, depending on the situation, it gives you an idea what you should take for a team. So generally, generally the number I like to stick with, if I can, is 6, because I like to send them out. I like to send my team out in groups of 3. So, you know, you have 3 at base camp, monitoring equipment, watching the DVR, just keeping an eye on things. And then you've got 3 in the field that can, one that's in charge of handling the audio, one that's in charge of handling video, and the third person that's in charge of handling the instruments like our EMF detectors and things like that. Now, to the other question, my favorite piece of equipment. That's a good one. I generally like the Mel meter quite a bit, just because I enjoy the fact that it measures in real time temperature and the EMF. However, we just recently got ourselves a new toy that we're waiting to play with. We'll be taking it on our next case in a few weeks, and that's the FLIR thermal imager. So that one might be coming to the top of the list. I haven't had a chance to play with it as much yet.
Fantastic. I know Kat got one recently, and she's having a real blast with it. I'd love to get one.
She was sending me all kinds of pictures to look at from that. It is fun to see some of what comes from those, like some of the reflections in windows and all. And it's amazing how many reflections and surfaces in your house that can reflect heat can cause false readings in that. So that's why when you are working with that, it can be a bit difficult to get used to. So we're looking forward to actually having it out on our case too.
We've got another question here for you, John, that says, do you have a camera person for every investigation? Well, I think you already just answered that, but please go ahead.
I think what they mean is a dedicated camera person, like a documentarian. We generally like to, but most often our investigators are always investigating and always going. So I prefer to have everybody able to do every job. That way, if somebody can't make it, we actually have somebody who can fill in. So on any given time, any person on my team will be the one holding that camera. So it's just that way everything's rounded. Everybody knows everybody's job, and if something happens and somebody can't make it, you're not scrambling. So that's generally the way we work with what we're doing there.
Great. Yeah, I know we do the same thing more or less. Everybody can kind of use a camera or the PSP-7. I'd like to get the PSP-11, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah.
What the picture hold, what the pocketbook says.
True that. No, another one. A lot of my guys like. We have one of our investigators. He's overseas right now. He's in the military, so he's overseas serving. We're waiting for his safe return in a month's time, actually, on May 6th. So fingers crossed. He's not in a combat role, so we're fairly sure he's going to be coming back to us unharmed and ready to go. But his favorite toy, and I know he's been bugging me like crazy to see some of the footage we've caught with it lately, is our Kinect camera. So that's that. I know he's been after me to see some of the new ones from that. We've had a few good captures on that as well. So that's definitely one that's always been a popular thing.
What does your Kinect camera do? Just so our viewers know how you are referring to that.
Well, the Kinect camera is actually the camera that's from an Xbox 360 with special software and such that you can load onto your computer. You can connect your camera to the computer, and what it will see is it will actually take pictures in infrared, and it will, where it sees a human or a human form, it will create, a biometric skeleton. So you'll see basically like a green stick figure on the screen in where a person would be. Like if I was to stand in the, if I was to stand in front of the camera at the range it reads, you would see my outline. Plus, you would see the like my arm here would be showing as a green bar. There would be another one for my head and another one down. Like you would basically see that. And that camera, what we're looking for with that is we'll set it up, and we're looking for anything anomalous with it. And we've had a couple times. We had one case. He was there, and it was one that he thought was amazing. However, our software was malfunctioning at the time, and we weren't able to record it. But at the end of the hall, you see myself and another investigator, Julie, and he was watching as he saw another human figure, which, again, this has IR, so you can see real time where the people are, as well as what the stick figure actually is. But this figure actually leaned out of the other room and looked down the hall at us before leaning back. So, honestly, wish we had somebody notice that the camera wasn't recording, but Chris was kind of focused on what was on the screen and missed the fact that the camera had stopped recording 5 minutes before that.
Oh, gee, that's frustrating when that happens, isn't it?
It is, but you know, things happen. Batteries die, batteries go out. Like battery drain, we all know is very common in the paranormal. We had one time at the Witch Hollow. We were upstairs, brand new batteries, just off the charger. Put them on, go upstairs, ask for something to happen. My battery dies. My EVP dies. Everything's dead. As it does, we hear a loud bang on the side of the building. You know, we look out thinking, okay, a bird or something just flew into the side of the building. I'm looking at 6 feet of snow out there, and it's undisturbed. So what that bang was, we don't know, but we'll never know because, unfortunately, all of our equipment lost power at that exact moment.
Yeah, and that's exactly the time something will happen when you can't capture it. Often makes you wonder if it's not on purpose, you know?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I know I really enjoy using the Mel meter as well, because, as you say, it gives you an instant feedback. Well, I know when Marie and I were in Huntsville in the Dyers Memorial Park, and it was really amazing how that thing would, in broad sunlight, temperature would go down markedly, a good 8, 10, sometimes 12 degrees. When we were in shade, it would come right up. And what normally it would be the reverse. But we got a lot of EVPs there. Very interesting EVPs, but it was really strange the way the temperature was coming through the Mel meter on that.
Well, the one thing with the Mel meter and its temperature, I do know, is that when you are using it, you have to stay stationary with it for I believe it's 10 seconds to get the reading. Otherwise, if you're moving with the temperature reading, your readings will be all over the place. Like we did some experimentation with that, and we found that, and it's actually, when we read the manual, it was saying there will be a delay. So we were experimenting to see what that delay would be. So, but generally, we've found that without holding it for 10 seconds, you can't trust that temperature on it because it will fluctuate a lot. I'm not sure if that explains it or anything, but
yeah, like I say, we were in direct sunlight, and this is what would happen. It would just bang, it would go right down. And we held it for so many seconds just to see, you know, if it was going to fluctuate anymore. But it was amazing that in direct sunlight how it went down, and in the shade it went up. So I don't know. It was a rather strange place, but we do plan on going back again this summer. Make another day of it and see what all we can get.
Oh, I don't blame you there at all.
Oh, for sure. So what other things do you find interesting as far as your investigations go?
Well, we've come across quite a few. We've got a lot. We've had one recently. I can't say too much because it is episode 2 of the Paranormal Project, the Ottawa Paranormal Project, which is going to be airing this fall. But in that episode, we are investigating the Manotick Mill, you know, a known haunted location here. While we were there, we did have a couple of occurrences, things that people are going to enjoy watching for. One of the biggest ones, we weren't able to put it into air because we weren't able to capture it, is downstairs in the mill where the turbines are. We were down there. There was myself, I believe it was Julie was with me, and Jeff, one of our newer investigators. And one of the claims is a young boy who had drowned in the water, his body had washed up there, and that was in the 1950s. So that was a documented death that everyone knew about because it was a small boy in the town, in that small town in the 1950s. Everybody knows about it. So his spirit was supposed to be lingering in the mill. So while we were down there, Jeff was asking, Jeff has kids, and he says, well, you know, my kids like when I whistle. So he was whistling along a tune. And while we're down there, we kept hearing these faint whistles coming back to us. Now, obviously, at first, we're thinking it's an echo. So then we tried to change it up. I whistled, nothing happened. Julie would whistle, nothing would happen. Jeff would whistle, and you know, an echo, you would expect it would come back at fairly regular time interval, right? This was coming back. We had a couple where we'd sit for 10 seconds, it would come. Another one, it would come instantaneous. There was just, the time on them was just so erratic. It was unnerving. We sent investigators out at the same time just to check and make sure, you know, somebody wasn't out where the water's coming in at the edge just screwing with us. But no, there was nobody in sight. There was absolutely nothing. But unfortunately, the roar of the water in the turbines, we weren't able to pick up the audio of those whistles, so it ended up getting cut from the episode. But for the rest of us, we all see it as it was definitely a very interesting personal experience.
Well, that's really interesting to know. Now, this particular mill that you're referring to, is that the same one where the lady, her skirt or something was caught in the mill's wheels?
That is the one.
That is the one.
That is the one.
See that one.
That is the one. That actually happened on the second floor. We did have a couple of interesting things up there, but we have to wait for it to come out for that one.
Right. You don't want to give too much away.
No, my producers will shoot me if I did that.
Oh, well, I can understand that. Definitely. And of course, you do want to keep some privacy for the client as well. So that's quite understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love to see that place. I've read about it. I've heard a lot about it. And in fact, I believe they had a special on TV about that one night, about her, this lady. But I don't recall hearing about the little boy who had drowned.
No,
and I've got a question for you. I'm sorry?
No, the little boy was one we actually found from the curators and the historians on site. So it's not one that's generally associated with the mill and its story. That would be the lady, the old owner's wife. For some reason, her name escapes me right now. I believe it was Anne, but the name is escaping me right now.
Isn't that always the way you'll think of it as soon as the show stops?
Oh, absolutely.
Guarantee you.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I've got another question for you, John, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of our viewers is asking, have you ever seen a visible entity on any of your investigations?
On an investigation, no. We have yet to come across one of those from a house when we were investigating. Myself personally, I have seen on 2 separate occasions. When I was 8 years old, my first paranormal experience was actually seeing the apparition of my great-grandfather in my family's funeral home. I didn't know who it was because he had died when I was 3 months old. So that was rather interesting. My dad went around the building looking for, you know, who I saw and was waving to in the basement, but nobody was there. So since then, that building still stands, and now it's an adult learning annex, and probably the place that I myself want to investigate the most, because everyone in that basement has reported seeing my great-grandfather.
Amazing.
Oh, absolutely. The other one I've seen, it was in a house that's no longer standing in my hometown. It was owned by a gentleman named Mr. Farmer back in the I believe it was the 1950s when he passed. But he's been seen in the picture window by, I believe at last count, there was almost 2,000 recorded sightings of him by people driving by on the street, as well as people who have lived there had seen him. I myself was asleep on the couch in the living room, woke up one night to see him at the picture window, which would have been behind the couch. So that was the second time that I'd actually seen an apparition. But of course, they don't like to show up when I'm on an investigation and have my camera ready. So.
Right. Well, I know on New Year's Eve I made a bad mistake. I didn't ask the spirits permission to photograph them, and I should have, because I know better, but it slipped my mind that time. Now we've got another question for you, if you don't mind. One of the viewers is asking, is there any such a thing as a certified demonologist?
As a certified demonologist?
Yes.
It depends on who you ask, honestly. The Catholic Church would tell you yes, because they do have a course offered at the Vatican for their priests that do it. But there are also others out there that are calling themselves demonologists. The term demonologist, honestly, there are a lot of people that look at the actual meaning in the dictionary of it, and it's someone who studies demons and demonic behavior. When in truth, that's not the proper way when we look at a demonologist, what we're looking for. Most people, when you want to find a demonologist, you would look for someone that would be a Christian demonologist, biblical demonologist, things like that. Those are the people that, if you're looking for help with demonic, they're the ones you want to contact. They've got some training from the church and such. But to my knowledge, there is no honest certification outside of the Vatican for it, that because honestly, there's no regulation or anything outside of there for demonology.
Mm-hmm. I often wonder, if sometimes it mightn't be a good idea to have some form of regulation. It might deter some of the ones who are the phonies, you know what I mean? But then it would also deter the people who are serious, that would probably have to pay to take whatever course was there. What's your feeling or opinion on that?
Well, again, a lot of these things we're looking at are hypothetical and theoretical and can't be proven. And a lot of the times when you're dealing with the demonic, it's not something for everyone. It's not something people should want to actually get into and pursue. Those that actually are pursuing it, like myself, like Nicholas Benedict, Mark Huneman, Kelly Dalo, people like that, Ralph Sarchi is another well-known one. People like that, we do this because we've been called to. We haven't done it because we wanted to. The people that are in these situations, they somehow are brought to us, and we're, again, like I said, we're called to being demonologists.
Right. I know, like, one particular expulsion that I did, like, I don't particularly use Roman Catholic methods because I'm not a Roman Catholic, but however, I am strong on prayer, and I am very strong on the Bible reading, etc., and using particular verses in order to get this demon to leave, or evil entity, even if they're not a demon.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I certainly understand where you're coming from there. We've got another question, John.
Yes.
Regarding how you deal with situations and people's different beliefs. If you could touch on that.
Well, when we're in a situation where we're always respectful of people's beliefs. I mean, you have to look at it. Christianity is not the only way to go. It's what I am, and it's what most of my team is, and it is in basically this side of the world, North America. It is the predominant in the society. So we do see a lot of that. But we also see a lot of other beliefs. We have a native shaman that we work with. He has actually been successful in expelling what they would believe to be the equivalent of a demon from native households that we've visited. We also, I haven't worked with one before, but I've met a couple who are Jewish rabbis that would deal with what they would consider to be the demonic. So each one of these faiths, when you come into these houses where there are people with other faiths, you always have to be respectful of their faith to a point.
Sure.
Right? Because there are times when some of these faiths, they're actually causing the problem. Especially when you get into some of the more, I don't want to really say it too much, but when you get into more of the occult ones, there are a lot of people out there that they don't know what they're doing with it. They call themselves these people. They say, I'm a Wicca, or I'm this, I'm that. I mean, on OPRI, we have an occult specialist by the name of Helen Arts. She's been studying the occult for over 20 years. She has also studied Christianity. She has a master's of religion, believe it or not. But she chooses to be an occultist and follow this. But she knows what she's doing. She knows she's made that choice. There are others out there, they don't know what they're doing, and they just find themselves getting into trouble, and just a lot of things that are happening that shouldn't be because they're not careful. They don't know what they're doing.
Yes, and it can cause more trouble, and then they find they can't get out of it, and so they have to call in an investigator to help them.
Absolutely.
They're not only putting themselves and their families at risk, but they're putting the investigators at risk too, especially on repeat visits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we've had some of those
Okay.
where one of the most notable ones we had a family, and they were practicing Wicca just for fun. They were just playing around with it, right? We would ask them, "Were you putting up protection circles or anything?" And of course, the reaction we get from them is, "Well, no, we weren't told to do that." It's like, well, if you weren't told, why are you being told to do these things? If you're doing this, you should know what you're doing. But
Exactly. Exactly.
and in the end of that one, we ended up having to walk away because the hardest part when you're doing this job is actually to know when you can't help and you have to walk away. Because these people, no matter what we did, no matter what we told them, they refused to listen to us. And they got to the point where, you know, they were calling daily saying, "These things are here, they won't leave us alone." And we're like, "Well, what are you doing?" And they're like, "Well, we're trying to do this spell or this thing." And it's like, "Well, we told you not to do that because, you know, that's what's causing this. You need to stop." But at that point, at that point, if they're not going to listen to the advice you're giving them, you have to make that decision to walk away.
Exactly.
And often it's in their best interest if you do.
Yes, understood. I've got another question, John, regarding Judaism. Its teaching contains no overt concept of a devil.
No,
what's your opinion on that?
I myself am not very versed in Judaism. Unfortunately, I do have a couple of Jewish team members that would be more versed in it. However, I do know that the Judeo system does not have a devil. That's true, but they do have what are known as Dybbuk. Everyone's heard of the Dybbuk box, and the Dybbuk would be those mischievous, evil spirits that in Christianity we would refer to them as the devil, but for the Judaism, as I understand, they're referred to as Dybbuk. It's the same as in the Islamic religion. A lot of the time, they're referred to as jinn.
Jinn. Mm-hmm.
But there's more to the jinn than just demonic. But that would be what, in Christianity, that's what we would refer to them as. It's basically the same basic principle, but it's just your different belief in it that makes it.
Right. Like some religions, for example, like, okay, I'm a Baptist, and I've been told for years, I was born and raised Presbyterian. I left Presbyterianism and I went to Baptist faith as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always told that a Christian should have absolutely nothing to do with the paranormal, that it's sinful, it goes against God's will, etc., etc. And yet myself, I've never felt more, how can I say, more complete in my own being than since I have become involved in the paranormal and helping other people with that problem. Do you find that people sometimes chide you a bit because you're a Christian and you want to deal with these kind of entities?
I honestly haven't had that happen to me, no. A lot of people know, like, I'm rather open about the fact I'm interested in the paranormal and I investigate it and I deal with these things. And I have had people come up to me and just, most of the time they'll just laugh and think, you know, why are you chasing ghosts? You know, they don't exist, things like that. I get more of that than I do, you know, you're a Christian, you shouldn't be doing this.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I think part of that could be the fact that when people look at who I work with, as in the fact that we do work with Bishop Angelakis and the Holy Order of St. Michael the Archangel, it kind of makes them a little leery about bringing up, well, you're Christian, how can you do this, when we actually have him right beside us at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see, myself, like, we don't have a hierarchy of people like the Roman Catholic religion does. So, like, more or less, what I do is between the good Lord and myself, kind of a thing. So I ask for blessings, I ask for protection, this kind of a thing, not only for myself, but for the entire crew, for the clients, you know what I mean, for everyone. And that even includes the pets too. And when I smudge pets and children as well. Do you find you get an awful lot of calls concerning these problems where there are households with small children?
I wouldn't say that there's any more or less. with that, honestly. Like I get a mix of everything coming in, and I honestly can't say that I find more with small children than I do otherwise.
Okay.
I will admit, when we get small children, the families are often more irate about it, just because it's usually the parents calling us and they're so frightened for what's going on with their kids, or they're frightened for their kids.
Right. We got another question here. Are you afraid of ever bringing a spirit home with you?
No.
No,
That's a very quick, short answer. When you're no, I'm never afraid of bringing them home, because there are certain things that you need to, when you're dealing with these types of entities, there are certain things you need to know, and the biggest one is do not invite them, do not give them permission.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing, and you need to make sure that when you do these things, you are ready to go. I mean, before an investigation, we do our prayers. We do them before, we do them after. My house gets blessed regularly. I go through a whole bunch of different things that I do, saying prayers and things, just to be ready for this. So no, we take all these precautions.
Right. Same here.
To protect ourselves from these. So I have no fear of them following me home.
Right. I don't either, for that same reason, because I pray before, during, and after. Like even each individual room I'm going in, as I'm smudging, I'm praying in each individual room. And yes, I have no fear of that either. The ones that make me kind of scared, for them, not for me, but for them, are the ones that say, you can feel free to use my energy to show yourself if you'd like to do that. Personally, I think that's very, very dangerous.
And it is, because right there you've invited them.
Right.
That right there is an invitation. I've had a lot of clients, believe it or not, that actually were paranormal investigators, and I would ask them, show me the EVPs from that day, and almost every single one of them has either that, or you can touch me, or you can pull my hair, or something like that. They always, there's an invitation from those investigators to do that.
Right. And you know where I think they've gotten an awful lot of this from too, John? I think it's from a lot of these TV shows. You know, well, feel free to go and touch somebody, or can you slap so-and-so? And there's one show in particular, I know you know which one I mean. I don't think I need to even mention a name. But anyway,
well, I know you're a avid watcher of Zach Baggins. You love him so.
Well, when I want a good chuckle, yes, I do.
Yeah. But I do find a lot of those TV shows, that seems to be their go-to thing. Like on any show, like anyone I've ever seen, that always comes up. You know, touch me, touch him, touch us, touch this, things like that. And it's always, you know, they want you to touch that, like a person is inviting them. And, you know, that's what I'm saying is very dangerous. But again, you don't believe everything you see on TV. People shouldn't watch those shows and think that's what a ghost hunter does, that's what paranormal investigators do, and that's what I want to emulate. Because when you do watch those shows, you're setting yourself up for all kinds of trouble, and you're pretty much looking like making yourself kind of look silly by sitting there doing these things a lot of the time.
Well, exactly, because let's face it, John, these TV shows, they have ratings that they have to keep up, and if the ratings don't keep up, well, then the show's going to go down. So, but absolutely, no, it's amazing the number of people who will watch these shows and they'll figure, oh, gee, that's great, I can do that, just as you said. And then I can call myself a paranormal investigator. And in real life, it sure as heck doesn't work that way, as you and I both know.
Yeah. Now, another thing I do want to add, a lot of the times, I know somebody's probably going to ask the question, might even be typing as we speak, even on our own show, that people have to look at what happens and realize that what you're seeing is the end product from the production company. It's not me, it's not the TAPS team, it's not the Ghost Adventures team. It's none of them have much to do with the editing of the show. It's the production that would do that. So they will take what makes for that entertaining TV, as you said, and put it together to make it into what you see. And yeah, if they didn't do that, who would really watch it? I mean, what would they see? Me sitting in a room for 8 hours talking to myself.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's very entertaining. So.
Yep, for sure. Well, there are some things I've got to admit I have found entertaining. But anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, some of them are really good for a laugh. Others I sit and I shudder when I think, oh, how in the name of heaven could you say such a thing? You're inviting disaster.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
There you go. So what do you think? We're at 9 o'clock now, John. Should we go on any further, or should we call it a night for the show? Or
well,
what would you like to do?
Let's just see if we have any further. Are there any other questions from the viewers out there? Should at least try to get through all the questions.
Sure. If anyone has any questions out there, please feel free to post them to the Elaine's Extreme Paranormal channel on Facebook. And that way we'll get them live and we can put them right on for you. Okay? And thank you to those who have been sending in questions so far. That's great. It's been very interactive tonight, which is good. So, now that I've said that, we're hitting a lull.
Always is.
Yeah, it never seems to fail.
I've got people actually asking questions here, but
oh, good.
Most of those are, is it live and what's the website?
Yes, it's live.
Yeah.
Live broadcast. That's the only thing I don't like about live broadcasting. If you make a mistake, you can't just erase it and start over again.
Oh, I know. Keep you on your toes.
Anyway, yes. I'm sorry. I've got another question here for you if you're able to answer it, John.
Yep.
It says, how often do you go on investigations and do you take time off work to do it?
Oh, we probably do one every 2 weeks when they come up, just because we don't want to do too many more than that, because we do have to leave time between these investigations just so we can go through the evidence and look back at what we caught and, report back. Not to mention the fact that we don't want to get, we do have other personal things going on. We all have families, we all have jobs. And that goes to the second question. No, we do not take time off for this. Generally, I mean, there have been times where I've taken vacation or I've booked vacation around appearances, like last year when I was speaking in Windsor, or when I take my vacation and travel to the East Coast, I might book to visit a couple haunted locations or cases while I'm there. But generally, we don't take time off to do investigations.
Okey-doke. Now we've got Carol L.I. to thank for a lot of these questions, and I believe Kat asked one or two of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another question that we've got here, I believe from Carol, has your wife ever gone on an investigation with you?
My wife is actually my tech manager. She's on quite a few. She's yeah, she comes out. She comes out. She doesn't like to be on camera normally, so you don't see her too often. Normally she'll be the one either holding the camera or watching the DVR monitors. But yeah, she's been out, and in some of the ones we've had her on, we've had some interesting things happen with her involved. So
that's great. So has she ever actually seen any entities herself on these that she's been on?
Not on the ones she's been on with us. No, she hasn't. She had one where she saw something looking out into the hallway. Like, we were in a house. It was dark. Obviously, lights are out. But she swore she saw something that looked like just darker than the rest of the dark move. So that was the closest she's come to seeing anything.
Like a shadow person kind of a thing?
That's what we would liken it to in that situation. But at the same time, what she was thinking, since we didn't document it at all, was it my eyes playing tricks on me? Especially being the psychic, that's her first thought. But even she mentioned it to us, saying, I did see this. Might have been my eyes, but it's just something that she put out to see if anyone else picks up on it. That's the way it works when you're working with a skeptic. Even though they find a reasonable, rational explanation for it, they let everyone know to see, is anyone else having this happen at the same time?
Okay. So what advice would you have to give to budding investigators?
Do your research. look into what the paranormal is, look into where the theories that you see on TV come from, and don't just watch TV and think that's what I need to emulate. That would probably be the best thing I can tell anyone. Like, look into books by parapsychologists, look into, you know, the theory of EVP. How did it start? Where did it come from? I mean, honestly, some people, you would ask that and they would say, oh, it started, say, I think at one point somebody tried to tell me it was the 1950s when they got when they got, there was one person, I can't remember what his logic was, but I remember he said it started in the 1950s. And it's actually funny because it goes back to the 1800s, believe it or not.
Oh, heavens.
I had an article I posted on it recently. I can't remember all the data from it, but I do remember that it started somewhere in the 1850s. And a lot of people, especially some people we've run into, have asked us, you know, the theory of EMF, where does that come from? And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, well, the theory is that, you know, that there's a ghost nearby, it's going to set the detector off, which that's not the actual theory. The actual theory, I won't tell people here because that would kind of defeat the purpose of telling them to go look it up. But I will tell them if they want to look it up, to first of all search Dr. Michael Persinger. He was a Canadian neuroscientist in Sudbury, Ontario, believe it or not. And that's where in the 1980s the theory is generally considered to originate from.
Okay, thank you. I know sometimes people have asked me if there's any particular information that I would give to budding investigators, and I think one of my first ones would be honesty. Be honest not only with yourself, but with your team and with your clients, because honesty is the most paramount thing. In my mind, if you see something, let them know. If you don't see something, let them know. And being honest with each other, listening to each other, so they can kind of corroborate what one person sees, another might not. And it's just, there are so darn many things. Secrecy of communication is definitely one I think that really needs to be honored, because I know there are some who will, in the background, talk about different cases, name names, this kind of a thing, and it's really not right.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have another question here, John, and it's from Carol. She says, it seems you're about to wrap. I'd just like to thank you, Elaine, and John. This has been very informative. So it's not a question, it's a statement. Thank you very much, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Glad you enjoyed it and found it informative.
Ah, yes, for sure. It was great. So what would you prefer to do then, John? Carry on, or shall we wrap it for the night?
Oh, I think we should probably think about wrapping it up for the night.
Oh, okay.
I know my wife's downstairs waiting for me. I think she has some plans for later. So.
All righty. Okay, well, before we close, John, I'd just like to put one little shout out here. Next week, next Friday, we're going to be having a special guest whose name is Pamela Sargent, and she's from Empaths Are Us, I believe. I hope I have the right group. If I'm not, 50 lashes at dawn. But anyway, we'll be discussing the traits of the empath, methods of grounding and shielding. So that's on the agenda for next week. We have not determined our time yet, so we will certainly be letting everyone know. John, thank you so very, very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. We must do this again sometime. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Elaine.
All righty. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope you've enjoyed tonight's broadcast. And please do come back again next week on Elaine's Extreme Paranormal channel. Bye for now. Good night.